Hello everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith, and today we're going to be unboxing a game called Crisis at Steamfall. This is a game published by BD Games, and if you remember correctly, and those of you that have been around on the channel long enough will know this, we did a Kickstarter preview here on the channel for this game when it was seeking funding on Kickstarter quite a bit back, and now it's delivering out to backers. So it took me a few weeks after receiving this to actually get to the unboxing of this particular one, but I'm really excited to see how this game has gone from a prototype that I was given way back in the day when they were looking for funding, and went through an actual playthrough of that prototype, which you guys were able to see and hopefully helped you make a decision for or against this product. And now we can actually take a look at it in its final form, at least from a production side and a component side, to see what it looks like and how it actually panned out. So if you know nothing about Crisis at Steamfall and you want to know how it plays and how it feels, definitely check the playthrough link that's going to show up in the top right hand corner of this video right now, and you'll be able to shoot yourself straight to that playthrough where you can get a good idea as to how this thing flows. For those of you that already know enough about Crisis at Steamfall and just want to see what this game looks like in its final form, then you're just going to want to stick around right here, because we're going to flip this box over, take a look at the back, and then we're diving into the box. So here is a look at the back of the box. It says, "Cause the crisis, be the salvation." It's a cooperative, competitive experience for 1 to 4 players, so it can be played in either capacity. And of course, there's a big thank you there from BD Games to all the backers of that Kickstarter. So after removing the box lid for Crisis at Steamfall, we run straight into the rulebook. You can see the awesome looking steampunk artwork that shows up on the front of the box, also on the rulebook as well. This rulebook is the size of the box, so it looks daunting because it looks quite large, but at the end of the day, I've actually noticed by opening up the first couple pages that there is some white space here on some of these pages, especially ones with illustrations, so it's not as aggressive as it might look out of the gates. Now over here on the left hand side, of course, with most rulebooks, you get a really nice breakdown of the components in a list plus an illustration, so you can become familiar with what's inside the box, and if you have everything, of course. And then moving over here to the right hand side of the rulebook, you've got your overview, rules for rules, and objectives, and this is going to be the major stuff you need to know before you start diving into the phases of the game, the setup, and all that good stuff. Now I'm not going to go through every single page of the rulebook, but I want to give you an idea of the white space as well as just a layout and how it feels in terms of design, because from what I saw during the Kickstarter preview, I had a prototype form of this rulebook, and it was certainly quite a few steps back than this one. And you can see here, like for example with this illustration, there's a lot of white space around it, so again, the rulebook could have been narrower and smaller, but it's nice to see that it's an easy read and it's not just a lot of text smashed onto a page, so you'll be able to get through this pretty quickly. And the illustrations are nice, colorful, big enough to see them and read them without issue, so that's really, really nice. And again, it's a huge step up from that prototype that I saw. So you got things here for the setup, like the character setup on the right hand side here, so you can see some of the illustrations. They use numerical values to kind of pinpoint what the rules that are being written about per paragraph relate to, whether it's on a card or on a player board or a token. So everything's clearly indicated. Now I'm not going to go through every single page here, but I do want to show you that there is some artwork inside of this book as well. So again, artwork's going to take up some space. So really, you take all that out, you take all that white space out, this really isn't a beast of a rule book. But in total page, at least in total count for the total pages in this rule book, we're looking at about 22 pages. And that's if you're not including this really handy reference on the back of the book as well. Most rule books do this now, and I really appreciate it, because for new players, it's huge to not have to go into the book to find these, just have it laying out in the open. So I love it when that's always done. You also have some artwork, as I said, at the back of the rulebook again, and you have 22 pages in total. This also includes like an FAQ, which they've done right from the get-go, which is awesome because a lot of games come with the rulebook. The FAQ comes a lot later, so they've already identified some things that they think people will need clarity on, proving more so that they did some testing and have some things that people might get stuck on. So here is some of those answers. Clarifications, terminology is all listed there, which is nice. And of course, the most important part of this entire thing is that cooperative mode. And you can see they were no slouch in terms of creating this, because it's actually like multiple pages. So cooperative play is how you're going to be able to play this thing solo, which is how I played it during the Kickstarter preview. And they devoted entire sections of the book to it because it's competitive and cooperatively played. You can go either route, again, allowing you to kind of play in either way. I like the fact that there's a focus in the rulebook, so that's really cool. But that's pretty much all I want to show about the rulebook. Looks pretty good. It's not super long. And this is the second punch board for Crisis at Steamfall. And as you can see here, you've got all kinds of tokens in white. You might be wondering what those are if you're not familiar with the game, but basically what those are is a build out of your actions. And you're going to be using those inside your player boards to create columns, if I'm not mistaken. I don't believe it's rows, it's columns. And then you'll be basically activating a column of actions that you've pre-set up in order to take advantage of all the actions underneath of it. So there's a real cool strategy involved with this game where you're not just planning for the turn ahead, but in most cases, if you're really smart, you're actually planning for multiple turns down the line, which I really like, because you can set yourself up for some pretty awesome combos, or at least really aggressive turns in the future if you interlock enough of these actions that are useful together in the same columns and activate them in the correct order that makes the most sense for what you're trying to accomplish. I really like the design of that. Thought it was really unique and cool when I did the playthrough. And again, tokens wise here, I don't see anything that looks different in terms of the iconography from the original. Now on the back side of this token sheet, things actually do get a little different because I don't remember the actual characters' names or heroes' names that you're using being on the backs of these tokens. I do think that's really interesting because at least then it targets specific actions to be a part of the pool for a particular character, makes organization of that a little bit easier because I believe when I had the prototype, everything was unmarked on the back, so you kind of had to like organize things on your own. But it's great to see they went that extra step to make setup easier, and again, per character in usage. So with those particular punch boards out of the way, we now can see inside the game box where we got ourselves a bunch of cards. We have some tiles to go through. There actually is a punch board for some of the actual characters in the game because they're represented in standee form. We've got dice. We got colored standees actually, and we got wooden tokens now. So the tokens have been upgraded from the tokens that were originally part of the Kickstarter prototype, of course, and you got some baggies. So we're gonna go through all of these things one at a time. So here's a representation of some of the wooden components that come inside one of the Ziplocs. Of course, there's a lot more than just this, but I just thought I'd show you a handful of them. If you saw my Kickstarter preview, most of these are unchanged. Some of them have had some size changes to them, but for the most part, they're all made of wood and they're pretty much the same as the prototype. The game, of course, includes stands for all the standee characters that you can choose from in the game, and there's also a really nice D20 in there as well, which is kind of a surprise, and I don't know if I remember that from the prototype or how the dice rolling was actually used in the prototype exactly, but I don't remember there being a nice die like this one in the prototype, so that's really nice to see, and it looks like the quality of the stands are quite nice as well. Next up, something not too crazy but always appreciated is some Ziploc bags, of course, for some of the components in the game. Always good to have those so you don't have to actually go out and get some on your own. So now we're going to talk about the actual character boards themselves. You can see here there's a number of them. They all have the exact same structure to the right over here, but this is where you're going to be placing your colored cubes that correlate to the character you've chosen, and again, you're going to be building out your actions underneath of these columns, and then when you put a cube up here, you trigger whatever you have built out, which is cool, unique, and very customizable game to game. The other really cool thing is a mood tracker here that follows this curve. Of course, positive move over here, negative over here, but one makes you a lot more aggressive towards attacking, and one is a lot more effective on the opposite side of the coin for charisma and all that good stuff. So you really have a choice to swing there however you'd like, because you can take advantage of those as long as you're moving on that particular mood track in a way that's advantageous for you during your playthrough. So you don't have to stick on one side. It's not a morality track. It's not, oh, if I'm a good person, I'm going to sit on one side. You constantly are swinging from the bottom portion of this to the top portion based on what you're trying to accomplish, and of course what bonuses to your actions or actions you're trying to gain. So really cool. The artwork actually is phenomenal. Again, across all these, I always like that steampunk look, and they did a really good job. They carried it over from the prototype. Pretty much looks exactly the same, so there wasn't really any changes that I can notice off the top here, except that the color, of course, and the print quality is way better than those prototype components. And I think the back of these are also finished off as well. I believe the other ones were not. And yeah, looks really, really good. And there's about 5 different characters to choose from, if I'm not mistaken. I actually forget at this point in time who we used, but I think it was Marcus, and I might have been Jim and Beam, but it's been a bit, so it's actually a little foggy in my head, but I did enjoy this one. So those are a look at the 5 different character boards. So now we're going to take a look at the actual tiles within the game, and of course these tiles should follow what the prototype looked like, of course with some tweaks and some finishing touches in there as well. The artwork is a lot more vibrant and the iconography has been cleaned up. So you can see here is one particular location within the city. You've got another one right here. And of course, they all have different meanings for the iconography, which I'm not going to explain during this unboxing video because that could just take some time. But it is very intuitive. Once you become familiar with it, it all makes perfect sense. A lot of this stuff, especially with the triangles, has to do with basically your movement throughout the city. And of course, because it's in a square format, the grid pattern's in more of a rectangle square type format in terms of when it's built out. And on the backs of these, they're all like this. And of course, this will actually aid you in setup on the backs of these tiles as to how and where these particular tiles are supposed to be located. And they're randomized in certain positions as well, as some of them will note, oh, this could be in one of 4 different positions, that type of thing. So there's always going to be a bit of a curveball thrown at you when you set up the map, which is interesting. And like this one, for instance, always has to be the center, I believe, of the entire city. I remember actually starting here during our journey in the Kickstarter prototype as well. So a lot of this artwork is ringing a bell as I move through it, and I really like it. It's a nice top-down view, steampunk view of a city. It's dark at night. There's lots of illumination, lots of lights on, parks, that type of thing. So pretty cool. And these are all of the tiles that come inside of Crisis at Steamfall. The last punch-out inside of this box, besides the cards, which we'll get into next, is actually the punch-outs for the characters themselves. And remember, you've got colored stands that are actually going to go for each of these different standees that'll match up with each of the different colors you can see right here. And so the artwork on these ones, again, matches the character boards perfectly. You're going to have no problems finding them. And it's nice to have the standees again, because if anything was in miniature form here, it would add to the cost of the game. So in order to keep the game at an affordable cost for individuals that want to pick it up, there isn't any miniatures in this one, and this one really doesn't focus on that. It focuses more on the actual gameplay than it does going to that miniature level. So again, really like the actual standees here. The artwork is really, really good, and quite happy with what I'm seeing here in the final design of the standees, as it's definitely quite a few notches up from where the prototype was. All right, so let's take a look at the very first pack of cards here. Of course, there's quite a bit, so I may not be able to go through all of them, but I'll do my best here. The artwork across all of them is really, really cool. I'm not going to explain what they actually do because I think that would take some time, but I do want to show you guys the artwork, as well as you can start to see the iconography I was talking about on the back of the rulebook showing up here. So again, once you become familiar with it, this stuff becomes really intuitive and easy to understand as you move through. So I was really, really pleased with this, even in the prototype form, and it looks like it's carried over nicely here, as the cards definitely are of high quality here. So some of these cards are actually sitting horizontal, and then at a certain point here, as you can see right now, they've moved to vertical. And the backs of the cards will also help you figure out what is what, as most board games have those backs of cards figured out for easy organization. So here's to take a look at some of these interesting cards. Of course, some of them are just wild. Some of them are quite off the rocker a little bit with the steampunk flair to them. But I do like the artwork. It really does stand out. I also like they kind of got that like hue going on around every item, just to kind of make it pop a little bit more. This is really cool actually, because they have all the iconography with all the terms of the abilities that this thing can do. They also have usage stats here, and you start learning about like how many uses, or what the particular weapon, for instance, requires you to have in order to use it. So it's not just like, oh, I picked up a particular weapon, I can just use it non-stop. There are some restrictions there, which is really cool, and adds into the strategy of like how you're going to actually make that weapon work for you and work for your strategy. So pretty awesome all the way around. I'm pretty happy with what I'm seeing so far. And again, I don't think, and it's probably going to be hard for me to remember if any of this actual artwork changed significantly, but it looks pretty much bang on. Of course, the only thing difference is I'm noticing some things that were not in the Kickstarter or prototype that I received. Some things are coming through the Kickstarter that were likely additions during that time. So pretty awesome. That's the one first deck of what look to be mini cards. So you can see here, some of these cards are actually double-sided, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe these are some of the ones that can actually start on a particular character if you so choose that character that begins with one. You got a whole bunch of backs here that are the same. We'll flip these over in a second so you can actually see them. And there's another representation of another icon. Again, some of these icons are not on the top of my head at the moment, but there we go, the Horde. So these are going to be some things you're going to have to deal with within the world. And they have like the associated abilities and things that will trigger. This is really cool, actually. It definitely has like a Bioshock-ish type feel to it. It's kind of when I first looked at this one, was the vibe I got from the environment, the artwork, and that type of thing. So again, it's not underwater or anything like that, but it certainly has the steampunk thing down. So I flip these ones around like this. It looks like these are more cool and very interesting items. So some of these things are labeled as relics. They do particular things, or cipher keys, Pandora's box. A lot of really, really interesting abilities. There you go. Remote tentacle. That sounds like a useful item. Spider chair. Is that spider chair? Spider. It was spider chair. Wow. Okay. I thought I was going to say spider chain or something. Tangled cables. Teleporter. The substance. Some of these I'm definitely remembering because I used some of these during my playthrough, which is really cool. And then some of them I'm not remembering at all. So they must be straight from the Kickstarter, or they just weren't part of the prototype at the time. Very cool. And there's a lot of them here. So again, that's going to give you a lot of replayability, a lot of variability with the different items you can find and use to your advantage. And I can tell you right now, the iconography looks difficult to interpret, but I can tell you once you've played for a little bit, it really becomes intuitive quite fast. So the standard cards look like this. We've got a whole bunch of backs that are very familiar here all the way through, and then we get into some larger cards for sure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to probably just flip these over, and then I've got some individuals you can actually meet within the city. So I'll flip these over to this side. We'll start going through them like this. So we got Jack here, got the Madman. So many different interesting... That's actually really cool. Like some of these I definitely do not remember at all. Or it's possible I just didn't run into them during my playthroughs. But some of them I do. Like this one, Sky Girl, I think that was there. Steam Collector, I think was there. Thug. Coming over here, we got some of the cards. Of course, the artwork on the standard size cards really start to pop. I really like the design of the cards. It's really good. It's a good mix of the artwork as well as the abilities, and it's presented nicely. The text is easy to read. So they did a really good job of that, because sometimes card games can get a little bit muddy there with trying to show artwork as well as trying to be useful in terms of reading the text and also breaking it up. You'll see that that's really intuitive. Again, this is a whole other ball of wax, probably something I don't really want to stay on too long, but this is the stuff that you're going to basically be resolving throughout the game, and it's going to give you icons that will give you benefits or things that are positive or negative, that type of thing. So we'll just kind of whip through these, because these are really things you're going to experience as you go through the game. And then we get to the back here with the ones we've already gone through. So if I flip these over, I'm not too sure if the other side had too much difference. There might be two sides to some of these cards, so there might be a difference there in how they're used. I think I forget exactly how that works, but there's two sides, and it might be one. I think there's an exhaustion thing going on there too. So again, just really, really good artwork and design on these cards. Liking it so far. So we got one more deck to go through. So last and certainly not least, a lot more cards to go through. And these ones are going to be, actually it's really interesting. Inside of the game here, you have certain situations where you can go, these cards will be placed outside of the borders of the tiles, essentially. They're kind of like secret areas that you can go into, and you'll reveal these and something will happen in there. Some of this stuff is going to be brand new. Like, I'm not even familiar with what that is. That might be a way of tracking, you know, your actions or something like this. I'm not too sure on that. So I'm going to have to remind myself. There's some of the overloaded shards. I definitely remember using these as a way to actually progress in the main objectives of the game, so they're very important, these core shards. So you'll see them, the resonator, and then you got some other cards here. Wow, okay, oh, that's really handy. That I don't think I had during the prototype. I might have, but this is like basically the back of the rule book in a card form, so that's really good. Nice to have that, to keep that close by all the players. And if you're playing, oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about this too. The artwork on the location cards are really nice. You'll pull these and resolve them, and I believe that they'll actually tell you what you're supposed to put on each area when you actually run into one of these particular locations outside of the tiles. Like you move to an area that doesn't have a tile adjacent to it, these cards will be there. You'll flip them over. It'll tell you like how you can accomplish a goal here and gain a particular reward. Pretty awesome. So there's some really interesting game mechanics with that. And of course they have really good artwork because the majority of the card is art. So you can really kind of get engrossed in the location that you're actually dropping yourself into. And some of these I'm recognizing for sure from my playthrough, which is really cool. Rooftop access, I'm sure there's a ton more here that I didn't even see. That's awesome. There's actually quite a bit here. And then you've got, oh, the assistant, secret, the bride. So many, and these are the individuals or people of interest that you can find within the city that are going to help you potentially, you'll be able to do actions with them, gain them as allies. They can go on quests, and they can gain you rewards if you successfully complete their quests. So very interesting world. It's a very unique world they've designed with this one. Very interesting. And again, I definitely recommend you guys, if you don't know anything about this one and you want to know more how this works, it's a really, like I said, it's a very unique game. I've not played another game like it. Its design is definitely something different, feels different, and was built from the ground up, you can tell. So definitely check out my Kickstarter preview if you're interested and want to see more. But hopefully this gives you a really good idea as if you happen to pick this one up in the future, this ever comes back to Kickstarter again. That's one thing I'm not sure of. I don't know if this is going to retail. I don't know if that's the end game for it. I don't know if it's coming back in a reprint. But in either case, hopefully this gives you an idea of what Crisis at Steamfall is all about in case you have the chance to pick this one up. So thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo.